Tahereh Mafi has gifted us another Shatter Me book. I remember the days when I thought this was going to only be a trilogy. Thank goodness that's not the case. This might be one of like my top favorite Shatter Me books thus far. One thing Miss Mafi knows how to do is a slow burn. Oh my god. This book was so good. I honestly, I think I just didn't expect to love it as much as I did, and I didn't expect to love James as much as I did. I don't want to say he was like the annoying younger brother in the original books, because he wasn't annoying, he was just a kid, and normally I don't super love kid characters. He is now 21 in these books. Watch Me takes place 10 years after the original series. If you have not read the original Shatter Me series, I mean, theoretically, you could go into this book without that, but I mean, you would be spoiled for the original series as far as the relationships go, and then also I just think it would help to have all the background information from the original series. Shatter Me as a whole is a dystopian young adult series. It follows all of our regular story beats of trying to take down an oppressive government regime, and this series sort of continues with that 10 years later, and it kind of follows the aftermath of what that looks like. If you haven't read any of Shatter Me, now is your time to go. If you've read all of Shatter Me, a quick synopsis of what you're getting into other than it being in the future is James is sort of trying to prove himself. You can imagine being in the shadow of Aaron Warner. Not an easy place to be. And he just really wants to prove himself as he's not this little kid anymore, and he can be trusted with responsibility. We really get to see a lot of his powers in this book, which is kind of like a healing power. And it's a dual POV between him and our other main character, Rosabelle. And she lives on an island called the Ark, and it is the last remaining stronghold of the Reestablishment. So the people we fought against the entire original series. They have developed basically AI, but it has also become a main part of their governing body slash, I wouldn't say it's taken on a godlike role for them yet, but their entire goal is sort of to serve the purposes of the AI. So everyone in that island has had basically the Neuralink put into their brains, and the only one who has been able to sort of resist it has been Rosabelle, and she is often employed as an assassin, does the dirty work for the Reestablishment, and the only reason she goes through with it is because her younger sister, who she takes care of, they have threatened her life if she doesn't do whatever they want because her younger sister is very sick. So it's very much like giving Katniss-y vibes, but like if Katniss had to work for the Capitol, considering it is dual POV. You can imagine Rosabelle and James are our love interests in this book. It was so good. James is so funny, first of all. One of my favorite characters in the original Shatter Me series is Kenji, and I feel like a lot of his humor got transferred to James as James was growing up, and he is hilarious. I feel like I was laughing so much of the book. This is not like a funny story. It's not a happy situation, but it was so funny at the same time. Just like all of his inner thoughts and the dialogue, like I just love him so much. Definitely enemies to lovers. Like it's just all the things that I like. We get to see all of our original crew again as well, which is really fun. Even though their lives are not exactly going swimmingly either. But if you're on the fence about like, is it as good as the originals? Yes, like it's so worth reading. It's so much fun. I don't have the hardcover yet, but the cover is beautiful. This series has some of the best covers ever, and I know that it feels a little cliche with the eyes on the covers, but just perfection. This is the blueprint, and I absolutely love the new cover. I thought it was so beautiful. If you have not read Watch Me, it is your time to leave. I have many a note to discuss. Goodbye. Come back when you've read it. Okay, so it's very interesting that I read this after Sunrise on the Reaping, because I feel like there were a lot of parallels that I was drawing between them, and maybe it's because my brain is still a little bit stuck in that world, but it feels like, you know, we all said Suzanne Collins only wrote Sunrise on the Reaping because she had something to say, and I feel like that was a little paralleled here as well. There's this whole note about the problem will not be how to make people free, but how to make them love their servitude, and there's an idea of the AI being able to make its thoughts your thoughts and make you believe that that's your motivation. And I was like, she's not subtle, is she? Because this book screamed, don't get the Neuralink if it comes out. Like I said, this is 10 years after the original overthrow of the Reestablishment, and we open up on Rosabelle, our new female main character. She is 20. She's taking care of her younger sister, who is 13 years old and is sick. They are both hungry all the time. This girl is genuinely starving for like 3/4 of the book. Very much giving Katniss. She had to kill a bear at 10 years old. Her parents are both gone. Her mother died by her own hand. That scene was horrifying. And then her dad basically turned their family in. He now it seems like works for Warner. And we got that at the very end. I was like, wait, what? We thought that he was in jail for most of the book. We have a suitor, his name is Sebastian, who we apparently don't like. At the very beginning, that was like the immediate, I was like, I don't know what we don't like about this man, but we do not like him. And she has the Bella Cullen power of the chip not being able to read her mind. Like, everyone else is online, basically. And so they can all read each other's minds. You're always being surveilled by other people because the computer can see through your eyes and stuff like that. And it's very creepy, but the only person it doesn't work on is Rosabelle. We're not exactly sure why. She's on Ark Island, which is like the last remnant of the Reestablishment. And this guy who's like the main commander, who apparently was like a friend of her dad's, makes her kill people and spy on people for food and medication. And it's actually horrible because they see Clara as only a drain of resources since she's sick. And so they'll only give her really enough food for herself. And then she just gives it to her sister. So they both are starving all the time. And it's really horrible to like read these scenes as Rosabelle has flashbacks when her little sister was like, aren't you hungry? And she says, when you eat, it's like I'm eating. And I was like, I'm gonna cry. Some spies have infiltrated before. No one's ever done it successfully until James shows up. He has come on a solo mission because he is sick of Warner deciding that he is not adult enough to trust with real responsibility. So basically our crew all grown up. Warner and Juliette are obviously together. Warner is, you know, the head honcho of the New Republic. And then Adam has decided he does not want to be in the public sector. I forgot what he actually does for work now, but he's just like a normal dude with a wife and kids. And it's really sweet. I'm very glad he got his happy ending, but that's not what James wanted. He grew up, like he had a really traumatic upbringing. He wants this sort of sense of justice that Warner also has. And so apparently since the end of the series, he had gone to live with Juliette and Warner. And since then, Warner took him in as his half-brother and trained him up. He gets caught infiltrating the Ark, and then they send in Rosabelle, and she's supposed to kill him. And he's like, this is an AI. She's so beautiful. It could not possibly be a real person. And Rosabelle, despite the fact that she is kind of weak from being starved for so long, she is a very good fighter. She ends up like getting a knife up to James's throat, and I just love the way he describes it. He's like, it feels like I'm being assaulted by a flower. Like, she's so pretty and she's just small and so cute. Theoretically, she kills him. But the thing is, James has super healing power, and so he's coming back to life, basically. And he overhears Rosabelle, and he's like, apparently, Doll Hands is a serial killer. Great. Apparently, they were gonna harvest his organs, but since he's actually alive, he's like, hey, please don't do that. And he scares them. He kind of escapes. I mean, at this point, the way his power works with him being able to heal himself, he's basically a superhero. He's getting shot in the legs and stuff, and he's still managing to get out of there. And since Rose technically failed, she gets thrown into the cradle, which I am picturing as the cauldron from ACOTAR, except it's made of glass. Like, you get dumped into, it sounds like the brain juice of the AI. And while you're in there, Klaus can read your mind. By the way, the name of the AI is Klaus. It's terrifying. And then we switch over to James, and he's hiding out in the forest, and he's like, I'm taking refuge in the forest like some sort of fairy tale princess. And I just love like his inner monologue, him talking to the animals. Like, it's all so funny. And he is like remembering a moment when Warner is overseeing his training, and he said something like, it's not horrible, but then he got mad at him for something, and James was like, a glowing review. James is talking to like the raccoon that's near him. It was all giving Flynn Rider energy, which I loved. I put, Rosabelle is scared of Klaus's mental invasion. Tahereh is giving us a clear message, don't get the Neuralink. Lots of parallels between the AI we're seeing now in our world and Klaus, obviously. But Klaus is evil and theoretically ours isn't. Turns out James also got dumped into Klaus's mind-reading bathtub situation, and so they mapped James's mind. He didn't realize he was out for that long, which was kind of weird. And then they let him go. And when he was on his way out, remember, he was gonna kill Rosabelle, and then she ended up begging him like, please tell them to be gentle with my sister, because she knows if she dies, there's really no reason for them to keep Clara alive, because they're basically just using her as blackmail. And they set this situation up because they want James to feel like Rosabelle's protector. And then the whole point, I have classes trying to figure out how to make people think they're making their own decisions when they're not, to make them easier to control. And then I put, this is quite the book to read after sunrise. Jeez. It's so true. Some of these themes, they were really, like, if you enjoyed Sunrise, I feel like you would also enjoy this book, because the themes are both scary and interesting. James is fully aware that he's being recorded. So a lot of the animals have this weird, like, sheen to their eyes because there's cameras in the animals. animals. And I'm like, were the animals made by the Reestablishment, or did they just, like, almost creepier, they knocked out all the animals and input cameras in them while they were asleep? It's weird, but James knows he's being watched, and he often talks to the people who are watching him. And it's just, he's kind of confused. He's like, why on earth did the Reestablishment let me go? He thinks originally, he's like, I can't believe they killed me. Even though he came back, he's like, I can't believe they killed me because surely they know who I am. Like, Aaron Warner's younger brother, you're not going to kill him like a normal spy. You're going to hold him for ransom. But I just loved it because James, he looks at one of the cameras and he's holding up a fish that he caught, and he's like, how much protein is in your robot fish? Man has protein goals. He's super into working out, and so, like, it was kind of fun to hear him talking about stuff like that. Now, Klaus, while Rosabelle was in the cradle, has promised her a better life if she will basically go through with this mission for him. Originally, Rosabelle was going to have a better life if she was going to marry Sebastian. Sebastian's kind of like, I'm getting like nepo baby rich kid energy, but he's also like in the army, sort of. He technically is her superior. She was going to marry him, but decided no, you can't do it. He used to be cool, apparently, or like at least cool enough that she was like, yeah, I'll marry him to give Clara a better life. But he kind of became way more cruel after Klaus sort of got to him, basically. However, Sebastian did not get the message because he apparently sent out wedding invitations to everybody, because Rosabelle had a letter that was from Sebastian. She got an invitation to her own wedding, if that tells you anything. And James took it off of her before she could open the letter. So she doesn't know that she's supposed to be getting married next weekend. And we're watching James open her mail. And he says, the serial killer is getting married to Sebastian von Douchebag the Fourth. And of course, we're not the only one watching him. Like, they're making Rosabelle watch him, but also there's like an assistant to Klaus there, and she turns to Rosabelle. She's like, you're the serial killer. This assistant is super interested in the way that James is perceiving things and how Klaus is predicting James' behavior and like the words he'll say, like down to the literal phrasing of everything. But at the same time, Rosabelle is watching this and she's like, I cannot believe everybody got these invitations. We're not getting married. And even though James has super healing, we're watching him on TV basically. And despite the fact that he can super heal, he got flung into a tree, which was on purpose. And Klaus like fully orchestrated this situation so that it would knock James out long enough for them to kind of regroup, because James was more powerful than they anticipated. And it's so weird how calculated it is. They want to send James back. Like, Klaus has this whole plan to send James back and to have Rosabelle infiltrate the New Republic through basically playing on James's emotions. Something interesting that comes up over and over again is that when Rosabelle starts to feel emotional, she will think, no, I'm dead inside. I have been dead inside for years. And it seems like that's how she sort of keeps herself going. There were a lot of, I don't know if it's a parallel necessarily, but there were a lot of similarities between Juliette book 1 and Rosabelle book 1, and like the way that they think. And one of the times she needs to say this to herself is when she's going through apparently these monthly torture interrogations from Sebastian. And because she doesn't have the Neuralink and they can't tell what she's thinking, she has to go through these to see if she's still loyal to Klaus. And I'm like, how on earth do you expect this girl to be loyal to Klaus when she's getting tortured on a regular basis and starved every single day of her life? But okay, whatever you want to think. Like, literally, she's so skilled. If they actually fed her and took care of her and were nice, she'd be loyal. But I mean, not trying to give advice to the villains of this story or anything, but whatever. She does this so that she can get her rations and then split them with Clara. And we find out, our mission. We're going to be going to the New Republic. We don't have a specific mission yet. Like, we're told an operative is going to contact us. And so she's like, well, what about Clara? Like, I'm going to be gone for weeks. Like, she'll be dead by the time she gets back. And Sebastian says that Clara is being transferred to his mom's house where she can have a nurse take care of her and everything's going to be fine. Kind of insinuating that if she comes back and marries him, that will continue and everything will be fine. And even at the beginning of the book, Clara says, like, what's so wrong with Sebastian? Like, why don't you want to marry him? Because one thing Rosabelle's going to do is, like, shelter her younger sister and not tell her about any of this stuff that she's getting tortured on a regular basis by her so-called fiance. And then it's so annoying because Rosabelle's wondering, like, why has Sebastian not been caring for Clara this whole time? If he cares about me, he should care about her. But he doesn't, and that's where a huge disconnect is. And I was like, ew, like, he calls Clara a parasite. I'm like, that's her younger sister who happens to be sick. Like, how on earth do you think saying that is okay? day. And then, even more disgusting, he gives her an engagement ring. I'm like, ew, get away from me. She calls him delusional, and she's right. That is insane behavior. Meanwhile, pan over to James, who's still in the forest, and he manages to pull a chip out of one of the squirrels to take home, because apparently, even though the Reestablishment has suffered incredible losses and they're only on this tiny little island, they still have better tech than the New Republic. I guess during that 10 years when they were trying to recover, they didn't really have much as far as technological advancement, whereas the Reestablishment, they had built this island even before the Reestablishment was built, which, remember, the Reestablishment was not around for a super long time, because Warner's dad is the one who set it up, and then Warner's the one who tore it down with Juliette. And so a lot of this stuff on the island, it was prepared in advance, should something like this happen, that all their elites could escape to. This also kind of emphasizes to James just how strong the Reestablishment was. He's also a little unhinged. There were times where I was like, James, are you well? Like, he gets on this helicopter thing, and he realizes that he has to take the pilot he killed onto the helicopter because it's like biometric scanning control or whatever. And he's like talking to the corpse. There were times where I was like, James, I'm a little concerned for your mental health. He's trying to fly home, and it's not working because the aircraft seems to know that this co-pilot Jeff is dead, and it keeps asking for like him to keep rescanning to make sure the pilot is actually piloting the thing and it didn't get stolen. He's not going to make it very far though, because this thing, I think it's like running out of battery or whatever, and he's going down and he's coming down right where Rosabelle is. Obviously this was orchestrated by Klaus, but Rosabelle is out there. She's getting beaten because she's just called Sebastian delusional and said that she's never going to marry him. And I was like, was this part orchestrated? There were times when things would happen and it'd be like, was that what Klaus intended? Did he know that Rosabelle was going to snap? Like, even though he doesn't have the Neuralink in her, like, does he still know enough of behavior and decisions to have predicted that? Because it feels very organic, which is what Klaus wanted. It feels like this was not a planned way to get James on her side to take her with him, even though it was. Because Rosabelle like spat on Sebastian, so he's not happy. And he starts beating her, and then Clara is screaming, and James lands right there, and he fights for her, and he's basically a superhero, taking bullets, taking out people. Like, multiple people come up to him with guns, and he still manages to take them out. And then James tells Rosabelle, so like Clara gets dragged away basically, and then James tells her to go get in the helicopter, and then they get in there, and he's like, where is this asylum that they just took your sister to? Because he intends to go save her. Because one thing, James growing up, he was in that orphanage and stuff like that, and he grew up his entire life hearing children like screaming in pain. So when he hears that now, it's really a sticking point for him. To him, he thinks Rosabelle is gorgeous, but he's like, I could take or leave this girl, but this child, I'm not leaving behind. Rosabelle is confused by this. She knows that she can't go get Clara. Like, she can't tell James where Clara is, where to go get her, because her mission isn't to take Clara and escape. It's to do this plan for Klaus. And if she does good on it, maybe she'll save Clara and they can have a better life. And she doesn't really have the idea of a full escape plan in mind. Also, it would have been impossible. Like, even with James and his like extremely good ability, it would be impossible to get her out of there. As they're trying to pilot this helicopter away, Rosabelle is like 2 seconds away from going unconscious for most of the time. He asks if they're starving her, and she like freaks out about the question and then ends up actually passing out. And then James is like, okay, so I've been piloting this helicopter for about 30 minutes. Rosabelle is unconscious. He lands back at the New Republic, where we are greeted by all of our original series friends. And it was just wonderful. I love seeing Kenji again. And then James, everyone's like, why did you bring back this like Reestablishment probably spy? And James is like, well, she seemed like she was different. And Winston's like, because she's beautiful. Kenji rolls his eyes so hard, it's practically a sentence. I love that line. We're having snack time as a group. It's so cute because Adam has all these snacks that he would give his little kids. I love it. Like, Kenji's so fun. Like, all the banter is just great. I love seeing Adam happy. Like, truly, that kid went through it in the original series. And he annoyed me a lot for a really long time. But now I'm just like, I'm so happy that he's happy. But at the same time, it's nice that he's kind of out of the way as far as the plot goes. Like, he's not involved in the military decisions and stuff like that. So it's not like he's constantly crossing paths with Warner and Juliette the way he had been. Warner is very upset that James went on this solo mission. For good reason. No one's ever come back alive from this. And even while he was over there, James was like, I might be in over my head. Yeah, maybe didn't think all of this all the way through. But Warner is really defensive, and he's like, Juliette has been crying like crazy. You will go sit with her for as long as she wants you to. And I was like, I do love seeing Warner be very defensive over Juliette, but the way they're talking about her had me super nervous. And I was like, something's wrong. Something is wrong with Juliette. And obviously we got clear hints that she was pregnant, but I was like, they're all treating it like she's way more fragile than just being pregnant, which we find out a bit more about later. But I love it. Like, Warner can sense emotions. So when he senses James's emotions, when he's looking at Rosabelle, he's like, oh no. And he can tell that James is feeling really protective over Rosabelle, and then he's like, are you done, or do you need more time with your delusions? And I just absolutely loved it. Warner is gonna have James look after her. She's basically his mission right now, and he's going to try and subtly interrogate her while Rosabelle's over here being like, I am sneaky and I'm being a spy. Our crew is like, we're gonna have her think that we're taking her in and trying to rehab her into a New Republic citizen. But Warner is also like a little concerned about James, because he's like, if you like her this much, are you really going to be effective? And at one point he's like, yeah, the prisoner's been saying your name in her dreams. And James is like, really? And Warner's like, no. It was so mean, but also so funny. And I love it because, like, they do have a different relationship. Like, they are brothers, but at the same time, Warner has effectively raised him from the ages of 10 to 21. So it is a little bit more of a parental relationship as well. James is sent in to try and give Rosabelle chicken. Now, first of all, Rosabelle has not had real meals in a really long time. Like, she says that she's eaten, but she hasn't really had a real meal in a very long time. And she also feels extremely guilty knowing that she's getting to eat real food while Clara isn't. And she has this horrible memory of Clara asking what real meat tastes like, because they've never had it, and it's deeply upsetting. And for that, Rosabelle, she's like, on top of the fact that her stomach can't handle it because she hasn't eaten in 3 days, and even then she hadn't eaten real food, she ends up throwing up on James. And then, like, her inner monologue, she's just so confused. She's like, James is nice. I'm not used to this kind of subtle warfare. My notes were just one after another. Okay, Juliette is pregnant, which is what I thought. Kenji got dumped, frowny face. We're getting a Kenji book, I bet, smiley face. Because I was like, okay, if he and Nazira are not together, it makes sense for Kenji to get his own book, right? Because we would need another love interest. However, it seems like they broke up, but their story's not over yet. Still, it could be novella worthy or a whole book worthy. And I'm still waiting on a Kenji book. We get a confirmation that Juliette, yes, she's pregnant, but it's also, things aren't going great because she was essentially genetically engineered to be the spare for her older sister, and that meant her parents really tampered with her genes, and she wasn't built to, like, carry a pregnancy to term. Everybody's really scared that she's gonna die from being pregnant. Juliette seems to want a baby, but it's also like they didn't anticipate this happening, and so everybody's really concerned about her and really worried. It seems like she's on bed rest. She still has her power though, and she kind of like zaps Kenji a little bit, and Kenji gets defensive, and Warner says she can murder whoever she wants because Kenji's like, she's trying to kill me. Warner sets some clear boundaries and tells James not to touch Rosabelle unless it's to kill her. James and Warner have a bit of a fight over this, and then in the background we get the dialogue where Juliette's not fully up to speed on the situation, and so Kenji leans in. Juliette's like, what is going on? And Kenji's like, Rosabelle's really beautiful. And Juliette's like, I want to meet her. Like, it's so cute. Rosabelle is forced to do therapy, and her next door neighbor is also in therapy, but also seems to be a little obsessed with Rosabelle, and so she ends up stabbing him at lunch, which isn't a good look, and James ends up healing him. Juliette also is getting pretty close to delivering the baby, so Nazira shows up, and Kenji is freaking out. So I feel like we're not done there. There was also the other couple, their name escapes me. The techie guy, and then the guy who is like the lightning power. He just reminds me of the guy who wears yellow and white in Sky High. Like, literally the next day, Leon actually dies, and Rosabelle is blamed for it. And she did try, but she didn't actually kill him this time. And she's thinking about this, and she's like, well, James healed Leon. I wonder if he healed Clara, which would be really interesting, and I do hope that's where we end up going with this. And while James is receiving this information, that everyone thinks Rosabelle has killed Leon, we kind of get a scene over to Rosabelle where she is talking to Leon during his, like, final moments, and she realizes realizes that he's connected to Klaus, because this entire time she's been waiting for some random operative to get in touch with her, and she doesn't know who it is, she doesn't know what they look like, she has no idea. And apparently, I guess it's this guy. I put in caps, "This is scary, send help." It is! The AI is talking through Leon's body, basically. Klaus said that he was able to read her mind while she was in the bathtub of the cerebral goo, or whatever. That he could tell that she is not loyal to the Reestablishment, shocker, and that he has sent her to the New Republic to die. And that is her freedom that he promised was her death. Leon gives her a vial of this liquid, and Klaus, speaking through Leon, says, "You're gonna drink this, you're gonna go dig your own grave, you're gonna stay there, and then you're gonna explode. And when you do, whatever it is that her body's gonna explode with is gonna reach all these people in the New Republic and end up basically connecting them to Klaus. It's gonna cause like gene editing." And he says, "If you do this, we will kill Clara quickly, and if you don't, she's gonna spend the next 10 years getting tortured, and then we'll kill her." We also find out that Rosabelle isn't the only one who has this mission, and Klaus gives her 8 weeks to do it. And then Leon dies. That is genuinely terrifying. If I recall correctly, in the last Shatter Me book, we had somebody also digging their own grave. Like, to me, that scene in particular, it took it from like adventure to like horror. The way it was described and just like visualizing it, I was like, this is so scary. Rosabelle does a really good job holding it together. I think she's in shock, honestly. And then everybody storms in and they're like, "You killed Leon," and all this stuff. And she's like, "I didn't kill him. I promise I didn't do it." And then it briefly seems like Rosa dies or passes out in some way. And then she overhears people talking about how her brain activity is at 0, but she's hearing them. She's alive. And then she makes this known, and it's kind of a nice parallel to what James did earlier in the book, because zombie Rosa, she's like, "I'm still here." She tries to escape. She almost kills Kenji. She holds a gun to his head. I was like, Kenji's gonna be fine. Like, no way Tahereh is going to have him die. But this means that James has to take her to jail instead of rehab. James is very angry. He did warn Rosabelle very early on in the book, "We are enemies," but he basically is gonna treat her nicely. But he's like, "If you mess with my family, you're gonna see a very different side of me." And he says very specifically, "I will take you apart." And that's also scary. I like that. Like, James he seems very fun-loving, and his inner dialogue is really funny, and he's upbeat and energetic and all these things, but he has that dark side to him, which is, I kind of like seeing that. He's taking her to like her holding cell or whatever. He pins her against the wall and is like, "Who are you?" The moment is so charged, you guys. These two are already in love. I can feel it. But talk about a slow burn. They didn't even kiss this book. There was not a single kiss. There wasn't even like a real hug. Like, he kind of catches her at one point, and that was the closest thing they had to any type of embrace. I was like, this masterful slow burn. This is something that like she does really well in her writing, because like even in Shatter Me, Juliette couldn't touch anyone without thinking that she was going to kill them. And I do love a good slow burn. I can't wait for the next book, because there was so much tension between these two by the end, and I loved it. Rosabelle tells James her backstory, and she asks him for forgiveness for what she did. James is struggling. This man, his poor emotions. I was like, yeah, I know she's really pretty. He won't even let himself look at her face. Like, she keeps asking, like, she's like, "Can I turn around? Can I talk to you?" And he's like got a gun to her back, and he's like, "No." Because he knows the second she looks at him, he is going to absolutely crumble. At this point though, Rosabelle's not like much better off. She already really likes him. And I feel like that's when I was like, okay, so this is, she falls first, he falls harder. Because she's already like really into him. Another all caps, she is vibing. And then she asks if James would let her go. And at this point I was like, you mean like let you go to fulfill your mission? It's not like anybody else knows that you're supposed to go bury yourself alive. And then we get like her inner thought. She's gonna go to try and explode herself inside Klaus's brain goo bathtub. I was like, that's gutsy. Don't know how you're gonna do that. That's also terrifying. And then James is like, why do you have to go do this? And she doesn't tell him exactly what she's doing, but she's like, I have to go do this alone. I work alone. And James is like, well, haven't I proven myself trustworthy to you? And she says, yes. And another all caps, switching sides. She says she wants to infiltrate the Ark, and then she gets a sniper trained on her. It was just one thing after another during this like transfer scene. And so they've been in the hallway too long, and I think it's Ian who like trains a sniper on her, and then James blocks her from the sniper. And so they finish the transfer to this new holding cell or whatever. And then James goes to see Warner, and Warner's like, let me guess, she told you her tragic backstory. She's like super nice about it. She's apologizing. She like is letting you in. She trusts you and like all this stuff. And James is like, how did you know? And then Warner says that it's time for Rosabelle to go see Hugo. Hugo is her dad, who she hasn't seen in 10 years. And he's apparently working for Warner, which I don't know if we were told that at the beginning or if I like just didn't clock it or whatever. And then that's the end of the book. And I was like, what is going on? Obviously, Roosevelt isn't going to go and explode herself. We have to figure out another way to take it down. But we do have those 2 months to get this done. And she's not connected to Klaus. And so Klaus can't really monitor her necessarily if she starts working with the New Republic. So I'm really excited to see how this pans out. James is down so bad. I absolutely loved it. Like they're going to have just such a fun romance. I can't wait. I love this. I love this whole series. So wonderful. James already has a hard time talking to her when she's just like her normal life. So I really hope we get like, I'm a sucker for like a ballroom scene where like the main characters finally get dressed up and they see each other dressed up and they're just like so in love and it's so cute. I'm so excited. I feel like something like that is going to happen. Or, you know, like how when Juliette came out in her like purple superhero suit and stuff like that. And I just loved that. Similar vibes. And I just think it's funny. I feel like Juliette's going to have to remind Mr. Aaron Warner about how they got together because it just seems like James is going down a similar path and Warner's not letting it happen, which I get it. She's a spy. She could be wanting to go back and tell the Reestablishment everything. I get it. I'm just saying he doesn't seem to be at all empathetic and he went through the exact same thing. What was your favorite scene? I did love when James is like trying to talk to Rosabelle and she like laughs or something and then he says wow out loud because she's just so beautiful. Like it's so cute. I can't handle it. I also loved when he was walking her to her new holding cell. Like the charged tension between them was just delicious. I want more of that in book 2. I also would like to see a little bit more of Kenji and Nazira maybe getting back together if we're not getting a full separate book or novella for them. It seems like everybody outside of our main Warner, Juliette, and Adam were kind of like unlucky in love after everything in the last book. So I would like to see what happens with them as well, but mostly I'm just looking forward to seeing Roosevelt and James get together because I think it's gonna be adorable. I love his character. He's like a perfect blend of Aaron and Adam. Other than that, Klaus really freaked me out and I want to see Juliette talk to Rosabelle. I think that would also be fun. Please like this video if you liked it. Click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Caitlin. Thanks for watching. Bye.